called brain plasticity. It's, we see quite a few articles and blogs about that. What is that, first of all, and how does it benefit us, and how do we strengthen that brain plasticity?
Okay, so brain plasticity, or they call it in sciences neuroplasticity, so it's the same thing. Think of it as your neurons, and when they talk about plasticity, it's the energy that you have. We can't really count specific neurons in the brain, but what we can do through neuroscience is take the collective energy. And what we know as people age, unfortunately, what happens is the brain energy starts to diminish. That means the brain is going to have to shrink in its processing power. So if it would be like taking the energy of your house and tuning all the energy down, you still have energy coming into the house, but it's been dampened. So that's neuroplasticity. So the more energy we have, this is ATP, if people are aware of how the physiological effect works. And basically that's what the brain needs. And it usually finds the energy to build that in fats. And it needs water for the brain to work. But that's also true for almost every cell. So every cell needs energy. We live in an energy economy. So what happens is if we want to have a really strong, thriving immune system, then we have to have a really strong, thriving brain. That's how, because the brain is something called psychoimmunology. And just to give an example, not in the cancer world, but in the world of allergies, they know that when they show a newscast with an allergen, and they blow it up on the screen, allergy medicine sold 30 times more when they show those commercials during allergy season, because it's a psychosomatic thing. The brain sees it, and then everybody starts freaking out. They start checking their phone. What's the allergies today? Instead of checking in with their own body, they're looking for something external. So when we talk about working with the mind and body, this neuroplastic effect, what happens is used to be that they thought the brain just became fixed. Like you got this habit and this pattern. And the reason it's so hard to break a pattern, this is the example I like to give that people might understand. When I was a kid, there used to be a field by our house, and we used to love to run through it when the grass was really high. They could barely even see us. We're running through the grass. When it was really high like that, it was really hard to get through that grass. That's like building new neurons, neural networks. But as soon as we run through that path several times, because there was a little store on the other side, before long, there was a path there, and we could run down that path wherever we wanted. Now, if we wanted to get off that path, it took a lot more energy. That's building those neural pathways. Now, so what we're talking about with the brain is the more we use the brain in far as neuroactivity, and there's a few things most people don't know about the brain in neuroplasticity, is that your sight is actually 30% of your hearing. So when somebody says they're not hearing very well, it could have actually something to do with the way they see things. I mean, we've all been to lectures and we couldn't understand the lecture until we got line of sight of them. Like we had to look around somebody. Now we see them. That's because our brain activates certain regions of the brain when what we're looking at. Because you imagine our brain is not that evolved other than it was 200,000 years ago. Our bodies our lifestyle has, but our brains haven't. So that means that when we're walking through the jungles, we don't care about, we can become aware of all of this around us, but we really want to know what's right in front of us. We don't want to step on a snake or walk into the path of a beast or something that's going to take us out, but we're listening all the time. Our eyes take in about 1,000 pieces of information every second, and we only act on 40 of them. And the same thing is with our ears. Our ears take in 25,000 pieces of information every second, but we only act on less than 40 of them. So our brain is really screening out reality. We're not processing all of reality. It would be impossible for us. It's all happening way too fast. So that neuroplasticity means that we have access with more energy, more processing power. We can process more of the world that we live in. Like we can hear better, we can see better, we can process and solve problems better. We can handle stress better. Our body can function in stressful situations better. Some people just are naturals at it, right? If you got a stressed out problem, that person, you go to them because they know what to do. They seem to have that kind of brain that under pressure just unlocks creativity. Those are the highest paid people in the world. They know how to do it. Where what happens to a lot of people once they get under pressure, the brain literally shuts down. And I actually do an experiment with people. It's really easy for the listeners. If you're standing up or you're not driving while listening to this, if you're at home, if you write your name in the air with one hand and then draw a circle with one of your feet, you'll find what will happen is you won't be able to do both of them. And that's what we call a neurological storm, because drawing the circle is a right brain function, writing your name is a left brain function. So the two hemispheres collide, in whichever one is dominant. Like, let's say you couldn't write your name, but you could do the circle. You're probably under stress. You become very creative and right brain. You might even become loud, because those are emotional states. If you are the person that forgot how to do the circle, but your foot went analog, which means it's going back and forth, but you're able to write your name every time, you probably try to think your way out of problems. And that can be good, but it can also be bad, because your best thinking brought you the problem in the first place. So sometimes we have to look outside of that. So the neuroplasticity is, how do we know that this is the way the brain works. Everyone's brain's working perfectly for them, the way they created it, maybe not the way they want it to work. So once you know that, you can make that plastic change, but it takes work, like running through that field, and it takes effort, but once you do it, now what we did, of course, through light, sound, and vibration, is we're making the terrain better. It's kind of like rototilling the field before you plant the seeds in it. We want to make sure that it's in the right condition. When you, just like learning, for instance, they know that we learn so much better when we're relaxed than we're stressed. I went to Catholic school, so I learned how to learn under a stress environment. I jokingly say, it wasn't uncommon for, Sister Barbara or Sister Francis to come in and say, pop quiz.
Slap us on the side of the head.
Yeah. So, and I think that was good for me. I mean, I wish my grandkids would have that every once in a while, because they don't ever, we get shocked. There's a saying out there in the world that Mike Tyson started. He said, everyone has a plan until they get hit. He's a professional boxer. And I think that's true with everybody. Everybody has it. So we have to, neuroplasticity is, how can you handle life when you get hit? What happens? Do you shut down, or do you start looking for solutions? And this is about that reframing I talked about earlier. If we can look at our life as not a series of challenges, or threats, but we look at them as opportunities, and maybe challenges for some people would be a good thing, but challenges for other people aren't. So you have to think about, how can you reframe today? Today's different. And if we look at it, that's why AA is so successful for the people it's successful for. It's not overall that successful, 2% of the people, but for the 2% of the people that get results with it, they get it because one day at a time, they reassess their life. I can handle it. There's a power greater than me that can assist me. And the reality is, everyone has access to that power. It's just, are you willing to give up your conscious ego? The old saying that most of the great sages would say is, the more I know, the more I realize I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Where there's so many people, like my grandson being an example. I said, he's pretty good at sports, but I said, we should play some catch and get, because I don't need to, I'm already good. He's 7 years old. So, I don't think he's that good yet, but that's the way we think when we don't know what we don't know, and I think a lot of people don't realize the effect of their thinking. Your thinking, they now know that your thoughts can change 2,300 gene expressions. That means you can turn on healthy genes or turn on unhealthy genes. And in Dr. Bruce Lipton's book, talks about, these kind of things. It's important to realize that we're always turning on and off our best selves, or basically shutting ourselves down. So neuroplasticity is a way to open up our brain to its full potential, because the more energy we have, the more potential we have for healing, for a good life, for treating people well, for, being healthy.
So how do we create those new neural pathways? You said it takes time and effort. Yes. So how do we do that?
You can do it. There's several different ways that aren't just BrainTap. So I'll give you the other ways too, so people know. One of the things we know is that if you do breathing exercises, there's a couple, like box breathing or 4-8 breathing, or you can even, if you want to go crazy, you can go get Wim Hof breathing on YouTube or something like that.
Wim Hof, yeah. We do have breathing exercises on our app, because it's such a big thing. So breathing, we just published a paper with PubMed, where we're working with Bhopal, India, AIMS Institute there, which is the All Indian Institute of Medical Sciences, kind of like their MIT, where they did a research project with me in breath work. We did a pranayama that showed we could match the two hemispheres. What that means is dementia goes away. So if the two hemispheres are matched, people who had dementia before don't have it anymore. You can do that with breathing exercises. Wow.
Now, of course, we did it with BrainTap too, but we always want to show how you can do it without using technology as well. So that's one of the things. The other is you can do yoga. Now, yoga movement is really important for our body. Our nervous system is 70% in our brain, and 30% in our body. But that 30% in our body affects that brain really severely. So doing yogic poses and breathing at the same time, moving and breathing is key. I say there's 3 phases to health. The first phase is you can't outthink a bad diet. So you got to eat well. You know, you can't, especially those dealing with cancer, you want to get rid of sugar as much as possible, you know, things like that. And you want to have, you know, the healthy fat, fiber, and diet kind of combination that works for you. But once you have that under control, you've got to get your body moving and breathing. You got to have physical fitness. So it could be yoga, could be Tai Chi. Those are 2 low impact ones. If you can't do those, then shut the shades, turn on the music and dance, because just dancing alone, moving and dancing is going to move your body. If you were a client of mine and you were coming to see me at my clinic, you would be required to participate in one of those 3, either at home with your own YouTube or go join something, because I know the brain cannot heal if you're going to sit on your bottom. We need to, the best thing you can do to, and so even doing BrainTap, which uses light, sound, and vibration to get that neuroplastic change, which, by the way, we had a study that's being published. It's in a bigger study now in Seminole College. We had 49% neuroplastic change in women, 55, 65. They were all on the dementia scale. Within 6 weeks, we're all off the dementia scale, just by using the BrainTap 3 times a day. So it's possible. And we even did a study with women over 100 years old, and they still had a 30% change in their brain. So you can positively impact your brain function at any age. Now, of course, once the study was over, we told them, in order to keep this, you need to keep doing something. If it's not BrainTap, you got to do something. You got to do breathing exercises, meditate, do Tai Chi, yoga. You know, it's like somebody says, do I have to do this the rest of my life? I go, do you want to keep your teeth? And they go, oh yeah, I brush my teeth. I go, well, you got to do it every day. The same thing's true with flossing your brain. You know, because there's a lot of negative things that stick. They don't stick to your teeth, but they stick to your thoughts. And we need to clear those thoughts out and really have a great brain hygiene in how we think about our day. In fact, going to sleep at night, I always teach the process of reviewing your day in a way that you're a Hollywood producer, and you take all the positive memories and you make them in color and bright, and you step into them, you relive them. In psychology, we would say revivify them. We're going to revive them. We're going to bring them back. And I put them into a success reel so that they, you know, while I'm reviewing all my successes, everything I'm happy about, like, you know, holding my grandson for the first time, or throwing my son his first pitch, or, you know, all the things that would bring real joy to you, I review those. Now, when the negative things happen during the day, which I don't think there's anyone immune to that, you know, you're going to have negative things happen. It's kind of, you know, a misnomer to think you can have just a perfect life all the time. In fact, I should mention, because people are thinking that when they're going through cancer, but they took these mice, they gave them the perfect world. They didn't have to do anything for it. They died within a short period of time, because we need stress to thrive. It's just we need recovery. Remember, we talked about that earlier. So as we're doing these things, it's about really activating our brain, getting it to stress out a little bit in a positive way now, and then getting it to relax. And once you start doing that, what will happen is the brain will heal. It's when we get, I call it a neurological lock. So once you get so stressed out, some people go, I'm just paralyzed, I don't know what to do. That's neurological lock. And if you're the type of person that gets mad in the morning and you're still talking about it at night or the next day, you've got a neurological problem. It's not a psychological problem. That memory is locked into your nervous system, and we need to figure a way, and you could breathe it away, right? We've all had experiences where we've been with somebody who's gotten angry and you say the wrong thing, like breathe, right? Because they're holding their breath, because as soon as they start breathing, they know they can't hold on to the anger. You can't hold on to negative emotions while you're breathing. It's energy in motion, but negative emotions are energy not in motion. But as soon as we put them in motion, they don't burn us out anymore. We can flow through that experience. After you get angry or cry, so a lot of people have to go take a nap, you know, because they've expended all that energy and they've got to now rebuild that.
Right. Very interesting. Now, we mentioned at the beginning, you know, how I'd used your program BrainTap, and it's an app on your phone, and you also have the headset with the lights and the eye blockers as well. Can you tell us a little bit about BrainTap and why it works and how it works?
Sure. BrainTap is going to use ancient traditions. We just turned it into modern technology. That's why I do a lot of work with Brazil and also with India, is because that's where a lot of the ancient teachings were from the shaman and people like that. But what we did is we looked at, first we said, when the LEDs came out in the 80s, we said, what is really causing people to relax when they look at a fire? Or they look at a candle. There's a candle meditation. So once we could tune an LED to flicker like a candle, we realized that the candle was flickering at about 10 hertz frequency, alpha. Our brain literally matches its environment in light, sound, and vibration all the time. And so what happens is, as an example, we go to the ocean, we love it. We reflect the ocean. The ocean has bodies of water have resonant frequencies of 10 hertz. Mountaintops have a resonant frequency of 7.8 hertz. So just when somebody says they see a guru meditating or something, they think that's what it takes to be a meditator, which is not true at all. But they go there because when you're on the mountaintop, it's easier to be in that theta state. Now, theta is probably the greatest activation of parasympathetics. So you also release GABA. So that's why a lot of people have those spiritual experiences, because GABA is a precursor to DMT, which we make in our own brain. You don't have to take it as a psychedelic. I mean, these are things our brain does for us, but we have to be in the right condition. So what the BrainTap does using light is also, we need energy to make changes to the brain. So what's the best way to deliver light into the brain? Through the eyes. And there's a lot of research out there, what they call retinal flashing. Now, our sun is flashing and pulsating. We can't see it. It's happening so quickly. But when we go outside, that light is influencing our body through something called chromophores. We all have little batteries in our cells that collect energy. And then it passes that energy on through usually the red blood cells. It charges them through something called photobiomodulation. So this moves into the brain through the eyes. And then recently we put it into the ears. Back in the 80s, we didn't have that. And all the blood in the body flows through the ears every 3 to 4 minutes. So we're basically giving light to the whole body, even though it's just coming in through the eyes. The eyes aren't just attached to the brain. The eyes are brain matter. And if we want to keep 30% of the brain awake, if you close your eyes and meditate, you've literally turned off 1/3 of your brain. So we've shown that most people don't know how to meditate because they're not getting the result they thought they were going to get, because they fall asleep or they're not in that what we call an awakened brain. So we put sound and light together. They both do the same thing. They're both balancing the hemispheres. There's an algorithm, which means we've mixed these together and we've looked at it through, now we can look at it through something called QEEG, which is a neurological function where we can measure the electrical activity of the brain and we can watch the brain change. It's really interesting now. We couldn't do that in the 80s, of course. I remember in the early 90s, they came up with something called the mind mirror, which could finally start tracking these brain waves better. Now, there's always a way to do it through correlation, which means you could say if the hand temperature is warm, then you're an alpha. There's a lot of different ways, but now we can do it with certainty. So what we did now is we can also use frequency, and that creates a 3-dimensional domain. So when you have the headset on, we can actually activate different regions of the brain for different purposes. Now, on top of that, we put music. Now, music is important. There's something called the Mozart Effect. And it's not just Mozart, but the classical music from the Baroque time period. And they found out that when you listen to this music, your brain literally gets smarter. You become a smarter person just by listening to that music. Now, when you turn that music off, you go back to your, it's like putting on your Superman cape and then you take it off, So what we've shown is when you add our algorithm to that same music, it lasts for about 72 hours.
Wow.
And then you start upgrading the way your body processes. And it usually takes about 6 weeks. That's how long it took for that study. But even when we're doing learning studies or sleep studies and that, it takes about 6 weeks for the nervous system to really catch on and create a new norm. Just like what happens to anything. I mean, if you go to the gym for about 6 weeks, you build a normalcy up to going to the gym and working out. If you stop going for 6 weeks, you don't want to go because, that mass in motion tends to stay in motion. So now with this light, sound, and vibration music going, we have probably 2/3 of our sessions have guided imagery in it. And the reason for the guided imagery is just what I said earlier. We can change gene expression by the words we're choosing to either say to ourselves or have others say to us. And so